Okay. Good morning. Gonna start on the bottom of the test. Good morning, thanks. Jeff. Oh, I missed that. Um, okay. So we start on the bottom of Lamites at the Mishnah. Lamites Amid Beis. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. And in this chus of our learning, we should have the base of Migdach immediately. So it's like this. Asheichet l'shem harim. Someone shechts an animal and he has intention, he's shechting for a mountain, which is a avodah zarah, but it's not really an avodah zarah because you can't aser the a mountain. You can't say, oh, you turned it into an idol because you bowed down to it or you shechted an animal to it. We'll see in a moment how this works. L'shem gvois, for the hills, l'shem yamim, for the sake of the seas, l'shem naharis, for the rivers, l'shem midbaris, for the sake of the deserts. Shchitas psula. The shchit is pasul. And the Gemara is gonna mention that. Notice that it doesn't say that it's aser b'hana. We didn't say that. We just said that it's possible you can't eat it. Okay. Shnai meichen b'saken v'sheichten. Say you have two people holding on to a knife. One's holding on to the edge of the knife, to the blade of the knife, and one is holding on to the handle. Echad l'shem ve'echad l'shem echad mikalelo. Something. One of them is shechting for one of the items that we mentioned before, which is a problem, right? Because that means that it's for an idol. And echad l'shem davar kasher. One is shechting for appropriate, which means it's shechting for shchita to eat. So shchita psula, it's still going to be possible. Gemara is going to discuss how this works. We'll see. We'll see in a minute. Anyway, psula, the Gemara says in. We say that it's possible. That's okay, possible. But zivchei mesim lie. But we don't say that it's zivchei mesim. Zivchei mesim is an expression. It means a slaughtering for the dead. It's an expression. It means that it's slaughtering for the idol, and it's associated with Miriam. It says Vatamashem Miriam, and over there it says the word Sham. And it says Sham by the Egla Arufa. And we learn that avodah zarah is similar to a mace. And so we learn that just like Sham from Egla Arufa, we learn over there that just like the Egla Arufa is Asur Bana, so too anything for avodah zarah is Asur Bana. Also, it means forbidden to have benefit from. Whatever the case is, notice that our Mishnah, the Gemara is pointing out, that our Mishnah is not the extreme case where it's Asur Bana, it's just that you can't eat it. For a mini of a contradiction. It says a sheikh l'shem haram l'shem gveis l'shem nahar l'shem midbar l'shem chama levana l'shem kechav mazal l'shem michal saragan l'shem shloshel katan real ziv chemesim. We have a brisa that says exactly the opposite. Someone shechs for the sake of the mountains, the hills, the rivers, the deserts, the sun, the moon. We added some other details here which are significant, but in general it's the same story. For the stars, the planets, the constellations, for Michal Saragadol, for the angel Michal, or for the smallest worm. All of these are considered avodah zarah, zivchei mesim. You can't have enough from it. So this seems to contradict our Mishnah. So Amar Abaya says like Kasha, don't fret. We got this covered. Hadam lahar, hadam gada dehar. I wonder if the word gada is like the English word God. Anyway, Abaya's answer is that it depends. If you're slaughtering just for the mountain, so then the mountain can't become an avodah zarah. So we say that the food is also not considered takruvas avodah zarah. We consider the food it's pasul, but it's not takruvas avodah zarah. So why is it pasul? It's not takruvas avodah zarah. It must be like a gzeira. Yeah. However, if he shechs legada dehar, that means for the malach that's in charge of the mountain. So that's a different story. That's already turning it into an Avodah Zarah. Because that's already a problem. And now the Gemara says that they kanami diktani dumi de michol sara gadol shma mina. Because in this new list that we have in this brisa, we mention Michal Sara Gadol, the great angel Michael. So that tells me that all the cases were similar. All of those they all in the same category, which means that it's not shechting for the sake of a mountain, it's shechting more for the sake of the angel that's in charge of the mountain. Amar Rav Huna. The rest of the Gemara is going to be based on this Rav Huna. Amar Rav Huna, his friend's animal is crouching down in front of an idol. This fellow comes over. So there's really two dinim that we're learning from Rav Huna. One is, first of all, that it's his friend's animal. Second of all, he does a very small maisa. He does a simin echad. And that's enough to make it aser. So there's two chidushim here. One is that you can make something aser with a small maisa, simin echad. And another one is that you can that you can make something aser even if it's not yours. Gemara explains, he's following Ula. Ula was a traveler, and he would quote things in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So he's following the opinion of Ula in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. We'll see that there's Amiram that argue on this. But Afapi Shamru, that Rabbi Yochanan says that even though they said that you can't make your friends think also. You can't walk around town bowing down to people's cars or animals and saying, "Oh, I turned it into an idol. Now you can't use it." It's not how it works. It doesn't belong to you. If it would be yours, that could be a different story. But if it doesn't belong to you, you can't just randomly just bow down to things to make it usher. However, if you do an act that changes it, you do something to it, so then even though it's not yours, but it's still you can make it usher. Okay, that's the way we're explaining Rav Huna. That you can make something usher, even though it's not yours. And notice that Rabbi Yochanan said asa b'maisa. You did an action. And it doesn't tell me what type of action, but it's maybe even the minor action. Like we see from Rav Huna, that it was even siman echad. Anyway, Esvei Rav Nachman le Rav Huna. So Rav Nachman asked Rav Huna the following question. So he does three prohibitions. He shechs on Shabbos. He shechs a sacrifice outside the temple. And he shechs it for the sake of an idol. So, chayev sholish chatos. He's going to be chayev sholish chatos. If it was b'shegig, to bring a chatos, anything that's karas, is a karas. B'mezid is b'shegig chatos. So Shabbos is an issa karas. Could be skila if there's edim and asra, but otherwise it's just karas, excision. And so if it's b'shegig, then you bring a chatos. Sheichet bachutz, if you shech the sacrifice outside the temple, is also karas, and b'shegig is a chatas, and also sheichet lavei zara would be also karas and a chatas if it's b'shegig. I don't know how he thinks it's a shegig. I think there's a Gemara. The Gemara somewhere says that how does he think avodah zara is? How do you get that thought that he's allowed to do avodah zara? Gemara says that he was niskayer, and they didn't tell him the halachas. So somehow he thinks that it's allowed. Maybe he thought that this wasn't considered avodah zara. Maybe he thought this action wasn't. Whatever the case is. Now, if we're going to follow Rav Huna, that says one siman makes it already one siman would be a prohibition of the avodah zara part. So the Gemara says, then you shouldn't be chayiv for shchuti chutz, because you already turned it into an idol. It started off as a chatas. You turned it into an idolatrous takruvas avodah zara by slaughtering it. Even one siman, you turned it into that. So ashchut chutz mechayev, you turn the page because mechatach v'afro, not a carbon anymore. You're shechting. It's called shechting dirt. It's already avodah zara. It's not a carbon. It's only a carbon if it's eligible to be a carbon. It's not eligible because the first siman made it into avodah zara. Rav Papa answers this problem. How are you going to be chayav all three? Hacha b'chata saif askina and the kula b'hadi adadi kasi. We're dealing with the chata saif. Dealing with the chata saif. So then simin echad covers everything. Why? Because when you do the simin echad, which like Rav Huna said, simin echad, so that means that by a bird you only have to shecht one simin. By an animal you have to shecht two, or the majority of one, a majority of two. So when you do the first siman by the bird, so you're chayav on everything because that one siman does the whole thing. So it works out perfectly. The kulabadi adadikas. Okay, michti. Our problem, our question was that you were going to violate one of the three before the other ones, and it's going to negate the other violations. We say no, it all happens at the same time because it's a chatasayf. Notice that the brisa, the Mishnah that we quoted, Sheikh Chatas b'Shabbos, b'chutz is talking about a chatas, and we know that there's a concept of a chatas oif. So instead of a chatas beima, we're dealing with a chatas oif. Where it says michti, Rav Huna Kaman Amal Shmaiti. Who was Ula? Who was Rav Huna following when he said this? He was following Ula, like we said. He says he follows Ula that says that you can make your friends thing usher. Now Ula, the words of Ula was Maisa, but Ula Maisa Kaldu Kama. Ula just said you have to do a Maisa. He didn't even say you have to do a Siman. Rav Huna said the word Siman, but Rav Huna is following Ula, and Ula says a Maisa. So, and we're understanding that Maisa means Maisa Kaldu, the smallest amount. So the problem now is that we fixed everything by saying that one Siman is enough, but turns out that it doesn't even need to be one Siman. It could be half a Siman. According to Ula, it already becomes prohibited as a takrubas avodah zara already from the half a siman. It only becomes a shchita when it's the majority of the siman. Ella, so we're going to have to adjust this and say, ba'omer, the person saying, is bigmar zvicha hu uvda. I'm not worshiping the avodah zara until I finish the shchita. Okay. So now everything's going to happen together. It says, Yihachi, ma'yer yechatas, the shemin and zevach. Then why do you have to say the word chatas to tell me that it's a chatas ha'oy? Because chatas could be a chatas ha'oy, could be a shlamim, could be anything. You don't need a chatas. If it required one siman for everything to take effect, so then fine. But now that you're saying that one thing takes effect at half a siman, and in order to resolve that it shouldn't take effect earlier and then negate the other prohibitions, then we have to say that he says clearly that I'm only worshiping it at the end of the shchita. So for that, you could have left it at a behema and say the same thing, that I'm only worshiping at the end of the shchita. Elam Marzutra Mishmeder of Papa. Marzutra says the name of Rav Papa. Interesting. Hacham Mayaskinan. Going back to a knife. Going back to chatas, that's what we said chatas, because it has to be a knife. And the one siman was pugum. That means one siman had half of it that was already severed. And you're coming and you're only doing a Maisa Kaldu by finishing, going from 49% or 50% to 51%. And you're making it, that little bit is the shchita. So because that little bit is the shchita, that little bit is the Maisa that you're doing that makes it usher as avodah zara, and that's also the shchita, and that's also the shchutichot. So everything is bahadi adadi, everything is simultaneous. Because the way we're resolving this, we're saying that since it's a bird, you only need one siman to make it a valid shchita, and you're not even doing a full shchita. You're only doing the end of the shchita because it was already pagam. Okay, so we resolved everything, and that's why it's a chatas, because it needs to be a knife. Amar of Papa, he loved Amar of Huna simen echad le'avichatas tifta. If Rav Huna didn't say simen echad, then the Mishnah the Brisa that we quoted about a chatas wouldn't have been a question. What would we have said? we would have explained Ula. When Ula says Asa B'Maisa, we wouldn't have said that it's a Maisa Koldahu. We would have said it's a Maisa Rabbah. We would have said, when Ula says Maisa, you see, he says an action. We don't know if that means a minor action or a major action. We just said you have to do a full shchita. We could have interpreted Ula that it means Maisa Rabbah, and you have to do a full shchita. The problem is that Rav Huna said the expression Simin Echad, that means that we know that it's something smaller than a full shchita. And now when Rav Huna says Maisa, we think that it's a Maisa Zuta. I think it's even smaller than it could be anything. Now, then we had a problem. So why are you saying a chatas? Why does it have to be a knife? I'm sorry. We had a problem because we said that the Brisa of chatas said that you violate all three together. And it turns out that you violate Avodah Zarah before the other ones. But if you would only violate the Avodah Zarah together with the full shchita, then we wouldn't have had that problem. Okay. The Amar of Papa, I'm sorry, I skipped something. My Maisa Rabbah would have explained that when Ula says Maisa means a Maisa Rabbah, not a Maisa. The Amar of Papa, Rav Papa has another statement over here. Ilavdam Rav Huna be'emes chaveiroi le'vechatas tivta. If Rav Huna didn't say his case about a behemas chaveiroi, that he's talking about that it's his friend's animal, rather it would have been his own animal. My time. Why wouldn't so then chatas wouldn't have been a question. The Mishnah of chatas that says that one is violated before, it wouldn't have been a kasha because my time the day matziasar, the chavri le matziasar. We would have said that in order to make his friend's animal aser, then it needs to be more. It needs to be a full maisa. Now, what does that have to do with the chatas? Because the chatas doesn't belong to him. The chatas belongs to the kainim, to Hashem. Belongs to Hashem. It's kachim. So in order to make an animal of kachim, aser, then you would have to do more, and we could have resolved it. But because Rav Huna already says that you can aser your friend's animal with such a small thing, so then we don't have that teretz to say that there's a difference between if it's your friends. Rav Huna already said that your friends is the same way with the small maisa. Okay. Gemara says pshita. What you're telling me is very obvious. You're saying theoretically, if you wouldn't have done this, then we would have answered the question. What do they say? If my grandmother had wheels, she would have been a tricycle, right? So okay. So pshita. The Gemara says, "Mao the tema kiven the kani le lekapara kedidei dami kamash malan." It says it's not so simple, because even though you would say that it's your friend's animal, but the fact is that it's not mamish your friend's animal because it's a carbon. It's actually you're the one that's getting the kapara. If it was your friend's animal, and how do you get the kapara from it? Now, when you say friend, it means it's not owned. If we'd say that it's not really owned by this person, then how does he get a kapara? How does he get an atonement from it? It has to be that it's partially his, and he's bringing it as a sacrifice. Yeah, but it's still his. We could have said that that it should work exactly the way his own item becomes asa, which would be with a small maisa, which would we would be left with the question that Avodah Zarah happens first. So Kamash Malana comes to tell me that really it's considered like Papa's coming to tell me that even though he gets a kapara, but it's really still not considered his animal. Okay. Now we see that we're going to see the machlekes. Rav Nachman from Amram, Rav Yitzchak Amri, ein adamaisa davar sheina shalai. Not like Ula and Rav Huna, that they said that if you do a maisi, you can make your friend's thing aser. They hold exactly the opposite. Yeah, even with the Meiser Rabba, Rashi says. So Rashi says someone wanted to say a Meiser Koldu, he says he doesn't, he rejects it. Meisvei. Where's the question? Sheikhet Chatas b'Shabbos b'chutz lavetz kavim chayiv shalish chatois. So when Shech Chatas, this is the Mishnah Brisa that we quoted before. So when Shech Chatas on Shabbos, he shechs it outside. It's a sin offering. Shechs it outside the temple, and he shechs it also for Avodah Zarah. It says he's chayiv 3 sin offerings because of this one action. V'ukminan, and we established it. B'chata seifa b'chatzik kanapagam. We already explained how it works. That it's a chata saif. That's why we use the word chatas, because we needed to get a bird in here. And also we said that the kana, the trachea, was already half severed, and so therefore the entire shechita was just a one small action, and so therefore everything was simultaneous. Time the chata saifu, the kulabadi adadi kasin. What's the reason why you're going to be chayav on this? Because it's a chata saif. Abel zevach, but if it wouldn't have been a chata saif, then you would have violated the Avodah Zarah first. And if you're going to tell me that a person can't make his friend's item prohibited, why does it have to be a chata sa'if? Except one detail here in order to understand this. You have to divide this halacha into two parts. The halacha of Eivid Avodah Zarah, there's one din that the person did a violation, and then he would have to bring a chatas. There's another din that the animal becomes takruvas Avodah Zarah, and then that was our issue with at what point does it become takruvas Avodah Zarah? If it becomes takruvas Avodah Zarah before he violates the shchutei chutz, then it's not a carbon anymore. So those are two items. So there's no shaila over here. He shechted for Avodah Zarah, he's going to be chayav. Problem is that if he can never make it prohibited, he can never make it into takruvas Avodah Zarah because it's not his item. So then, why do we say that the only way to do this is if it's a bird and it's like this? We could have answered that we could explain the Mishnah that it's not actually a bird, it's actually an animal. And he never makes it usher as Avodah Zarah because it's not his animal. Because it's a carbon. It's not his animal. So therefore, it's always going to be simultaneous. And you don't have to say that it's a chatas. You could have said that it's a regular animal. So that's what the Gemara is asking. According to the opinion that says that you can never affect the item, the object. The person has a violation no matter what, because he's serving Avodah Zarah. But if you would say that can never affect the object because it's not yours, then why did it have to be a chatas? Which chatas meant that it was a bird. Could have been a shlamim, and everything would always be simultaneous because you can never turn it into an idol because it's not yours, and it's not going to happen earlier than the shchutei chutz. Gemara answers that even the answers for this is answering for Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, and Rav Yitzchak that say that Eina the Meiser Davar Sheina Shaloi. The answer is them even the Kanyale lechapara kedidei dam. We're going to consider it his because he owns it for similar to what we said before. Before we were saying that Kamash Mulan, no, that it's not his. But here we're going to say that it is his. Going to consider it his because he gets a kapara. So when say an item that's his, he can actually answer. So therefore, the only way to explain this would be that it's a bird and it was already shechted, and therefore it's going to all be simultaneous. Because if it would have been an animal, then you would have answered it already from beforehand because it's yours, because you're even though it's kachim, but because you get the kapara, you have the rights to make it aser as well. And it would have been aser before the shchutei chutz, and therefore there wouldn't have been shchutei chutz. The Mishnah wouldn't have worked out. So that's why it has to say that it's a chatas. Itashma. Beis eichsin besakin v'sheichten. There's two people holding on a knife and shechting. Echad l'shem echad mikalela. One of them has an intention for all of those items, which is the mountains and the hills and the seas or whatever. V'echad l'shem davar, and one of them is the other person is shechting for whatever it is, which means just for shchita. L'shem davar kasha rather. Shchita siksheira, just for this. So then it's going to be a good shchita. I'm sorry, shchita sipsula, it says. Shchita sipsula. So what's the problem? Problem is that one of these people doesn't own it. According to Rav Amram, Rav Yitzchak, Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, and Rav Yitzchak, can't make it aser. There's two people here. One of them is having the wrong intention, and he's making it aser, even though it's not his. We're answering that it is his. It was an assumption that we asked the question based on an assumption that it wasn't his, and we're answering that it is his because there's a partner. Two people that are partners. Tashima, come and listen. Someone that contaminates his friend's food, which would be maybe his friend's food. The dama is he mixes truma into his friend's food. Now it can only be sold to a kayan. The market price goes down because you don't have the same purchase ability. And v'manasech, or if you pour someone's wine for avodah zarah. So b'shegig is pater, but mezid is chayev. The problem is he's pouring his friend's wine. It's going to be chayev. The shaila is, how does he make his friend's wine usher by pouring it? We said according to Rav Nachman and Ram, you can't make your friend sing. We said it's his friends, but it's also he's a partner in it. And so therefore, but his, of course, he can answer. The chiddush is that he answers his friends as well. Does he answer his friends because the part that he answers is really his, and it's now mixed in with his friends, and it's not batal? Or do we say that because he's a partner, he can actually answer his friends? I guess it would depend. I don't know the answer to that, but I guess it would depend on how you view shutfus. Do you view partnership as you literally own half? Or do you view partnership as that you both own everything? If you both own everything, then you would say that you answered the whole thing. If you both own half, then you would say that you only answered yours. Yeah, I'm not sure. I didn't look in the commentaries here. But anyway, that's an interesting question. Kitanoi. It says this is really a machlekes tanoim. It says, Ovid kichavim, shenisach yeni shel Yisrael shalei b'fnei avedis kichavim. Asru. If a non-Jew, an idolater, takes a Jewish person's wine and he pours it, doesn't matter even if it's not in front of an idol, he pours it, becomes asr. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, great people. Maseches Chullin Daf, the Gemara Bava Kama tells us is either Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira or Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava. No, Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Lai, I think. It's one of them. Maseches Chullin Daf. Anyway, these are the great people. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava was the one that gave the smicha to the people, and then the Romans pierced them. This is matir, and I say these two sages, they permit it because of two things. Echad, one reason is shein menasken yayin el b'fnei avedis keichav. And one, it's not considered nisach yayin. It's not considered yayin nesach rather, unless it's in front of a idol. Echad, another reason I didn't give you permission to make my wine aser. Okay. So we have a machlekes over here. If you can make your friends things aser, Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, Rav Yitzchak, Amri, Rav Nachman, and Rav Amram, and Rav Yitzchak, they would say, "Afilu lamandamar adam oiser davar sheinu shalai." So 1 second. Even according to the opinion that says What he wants to say is like this: what Rav Amram, what Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, and Rabbi Yitzchak are doing is they're saying that Rav Huna that says that a person can make his friend's items aser is going to argue, is going to follow the Tanakama, but he's not going to fit with Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira and Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Lai because they hold that you can't make your friend's items aser. Okay. But however, us, Rav Nachman, Rav Amram, and Yitzchak, we say that we actually go according to both opinions. Of course, we hold like Rav Yehuda ben Beseira and Rav Yehuda ben Bava that you can't make your friend's items aser. We, of course, that's because that's our opinion. But even the Tanakama that says that you can make your friend's things aser, they would actually agree to us that you can't. How does that work? They say like this. Even according to the one that says that a person can make his friend's items aser, which is the Tanakama. However, they would still argue with Rav Huna. Because Hani Milikuti, that's specifically by a kuti. Abel Yisrael, I wonder if it's an original kuti. Do you have a Koran? Let me see it. It's 41, right? 41. Let me see his text. Hani Miligoy. Okay. This statement applies only in a case where a Gentile pours the the guy. And Miligoy, that's by a non-Jew, Avol Yisrael, but if it's a Jew, then he doesn't really mean it, and Litzir Kamachaven. He's only doing it, he's only pouring it just to what's it called? The Ratzion, to annoy you. He's doing it just to annoy you. So we say since it's not really idolatrous, he's just doing it to annoy you, because we think that he doesn't really want to worship an idol, he just wants to make you angry. So so therefore, we would say that it's not going to be us. So going back to the case where someone is shefting is someone is shechting his friend's animal, we would say that if it's a Jew, you don't have any rights to do that. You're just you don't have any rights to make it aser. Okay. If it was a guy, it would be different. If it was a guy, it would be a machlekes. Okay. Tashma, like in the case of here, it's a noibit kechav. Tashma beizechs and besakin v'sheichten echel l'shem echel mikalila v'echel l'shem davar kasher shchitas psula. So we see over here from this that they could make it, they could passel, because there's one person over here that's shechting and it's not his. And we said that this doesn't work by we said that the Gemara answered before that he has a shutfus. So that could have, the Gemara is going to give us another option of an answer over here. Other option over here is, we say shchitase psula. Here we say, the Gemara answers, Achamaiskin be Yisrael Mumar. We're dealing with the Yisrael Mumar. Now this is a little confusing. I guess that means that he really means to do it for Avodah Zarah. So how is he allowed to shecht if he's Yisrael Mumar? Did we say that a Mumar was allowed to shecht? I think we said that a Mumar was allowed to shecht. Yeah, we said that. Okay, so it's Yisrael Mumar, so that's why he can make it aser, but and he can still be shechting. Tashma, come and listen. Second, how does he not contaminate, because that's mamish making a tameh, but how does he make the nesech when he pours someone else's wine? How does it become aser? according to these opinions. Says Hachanami, the Yisrael Mumar. And so Yisrael Mumar can make it asr, like we said, according to the Tanakama, that a guy can make it asr. So here we're going to say the same thing. Amalei Rav Acha Breidu Rav Rav Ashi. Hisru bay the Kibbal of Asra Mai. If they warned him, this is the Jewish person, they warned him, do not shecht for Avodah Zarah. And then he goes and he shechts. He wasn't a mumar beforehand. And right now, so the question is it going to become asr right now because they warned him? Amalei, they said, it becomes a mumar right now in this action because he's now eligible for the he's deserving of the death penalty. If he's deserving of the death penalty, then definitely it's considered a mumar. Okay, let's leave it over here. We're up to the Mishnah on Ein Shayftin. Okay, have a good Shabbos, everyone. We're on Mem Aleph 41a, the Mishnah. Shakayach.
Good Shabbos, Rabbi.